5 Live Formula One.
Well, sprint Saturdays on a Grand Prix weekend are always manic. We've had so much to get through. Of course, we kicked off with the sprint race, which we'll dive into a little later on in the podcast. But joining myself, Harry Benjamin, now is Jenny Gow and Rebecca Clancy. Rebecca, can you please give your full title, because I have forgotten it?
It's because you haven't got your notes in front of you, isn't it, Harry? A Global Editorial Director of Motorsport Network.
Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
An absolute honour to have you with us, as always. But I mean,
can I have a business title for this weekend?
You can have...
Sounds fancy.
BBC's roaming reporter, Jenny Gow.
Queen of roaming. Oh, I'm not sure about that, but I like it. I like both of them.
We'll roll with it.
Okay, doesn't sound as posh as yours.
Well, you were roaming the pits, of course, Jenny.
Director of roaming? Yes! Now that's
Global Director of Roaming Racing at the BBC. Right,
yes,
anyway, I'll tell you who was roaming around the streets of the Miami International Autodrome was Max Verstappen, who put it on pole position and managed to best Lando Norris. And I mean, time and time again, Jenny, Max Verstappen just showcases what a special talent he is.
Absolutely, back to his best. And people came into this weekend saying, oh, Will having a baby or his girlfriend having had a baby, would that affect his performance? Well, I tell you what, he was absolutely on it. He looked rapid. The difference between the drivers is so marginal, but Max Verstappen looked like he had it. He was just on another level.
It was really special, wasn't it? Even when you were watching it, you could tell how hard he was pushing, how close to the limit he was. I think this will go down as one of his really special, probably top 5 laps. I think that's how...
Really?
I honestly think that's how impressive it was. I think it took every ounce of him. When you look at Antonelli and what he's done in the last 24 hours, okay, not such a great sprint for him, but qualifying amazing. And obviously, again, had another amazing qualifying for the main race today. You've got the McLarens on top form. I honestly think for Verstappen, it was just an absolutely millimetre perfect lap, and I truly felt watching it, I was on board with him. Nerves, mine were shredded, he seemed absolutely fine, but I thought it was actually a really special lap.
And he keeps doing those, doesn't he? He's done that before.
Japan, right?
Exactly.
Was probably number one, I would say, if we're going to pick one out.
So good, just so good. And he takes you, as you say, to another level. And it's like being on board with Senna when you go back to those old footages and see it. And you really believe you're there, and you can't believe what they're able to do.
You get lost in the footage and you feel like you're actually riding on board with him. And he, Jenny, you mentioned about him becoming a father, and obviously there have been lots of comments about how it can slow you down. And he was just asked in the press conference now about what it means being a father. You've seen the comments about it slowing you down. And for the purposes of the BBC, I won't give you the full answer, but it was along the lines of, it's all silly, beep, 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 beep. Lando Norris even joked that he'd hoped that Max becoming a father would slow him down. But of course, and to quote Norris, he said it was a Max doing a Max lap, and it very much was. And so I think any thought of him becoming slower, or any hope, let's say, from his competitors that he'd slow down, are not founded.
In fairness, he hasn't missed a night's sleep yet. When he goes back and he does have to do nappies and changing and all of that stuff, it might be more of a rocky thing.
We don't obviously know when the baby was born, but he said when he spoke about for the first time that he'd had a few days with his daughter. So he's probably not had as much sleep as he would like. So I'd say he's banking a few hours while he's here.
Well, it has not slowed him down. Tell you what, let's hear from our pole sitter, Max Verstappen.
Hey, Max, congrats on pole. As you're kind of knitting the corners together on that final run, can you feel that it's going to be a good lap, as good as it actually turned out to be?
Yeah, I just, I had a tiny moment on entry of turn 1, which was not ideal. I lost like 400 or 500. But then from there onwards, I said, well, the lap isn't over. I just have to keep on trying to find a bit more lap time. I knew that my sector 2 wasn't great because we just didn't have enough grip. But yeah, that final lap, I try not to make any mistakes in sector 2, just trying to really nail the apexes. And I think that worked out well. And I gained a little bit more in the last corner. So all in all, it was good. I mean, from Q1 all the way to the end, we just kept on chipping away at it. And that's exactly what you want in qualifying.
From all the homework you've done up until this point, we know the McLarens are fast, Kimi's look good as well. Do you think you've got a car that you can fight tomorrow for that win?
I mean, we'll try to fight. It's not going to be easy, we know that. But it's at least the best starting position that you can give yourself, and that's already something.
Well, best of luck. Thanks.
Max Verstappen then starts the Miami Grand Prix from pole position. And I mean, in Formula One right now, we are talking fine margins, right? Just over half a tenth of a second between himself and Lando Norris. But this is good for Lando Norris, who is following up that momentum from taking the victory in the sprint. He's looked quick here. Piastri was quicker in the sprint qualifying, but Lando Norris is carrying that momentum and taking it back to Piastri in this continued fight for the championship.
Which I honestly believe he needed to do. He needed to come out all guns blazing this weekend and just try and claw back some of that 10-point gap. It's obviously now 9 points. And if he can get a decent result tomorrow and just be ahead of Piastri, I think that'll settle the nerves and that'll stop us lot and fans asking those questions that are uncomfortable about, does he have the mental strength? Can he compete at this top level? Is Piastri too much for him? And I just think quieting that down will be massively helpful for him.
So, do you think Norris is asking himself those questions? Because we've talked a bit before, haven't we, about his attitude towards racing and that he wants to be the nice guy to win the World Championship. And I think if you look at the way that Verstappen race and how Piastri race, they're very cool, calm, steely characters. Norris, maybe he gives the impression of almost being too friendly, although absolutely you couldn't say that about any F1 driver, I promise you that. For me, I think he just needs to take any amount of points off Piastri. I think that's the key this weekend. I don't think he needs to beat him by X amount of points or times or anything like that. I think the key for this weekend is just finishing ahead of him. It's such a long way to go. This is only race 6 out of 24. He just has to keep his head about him. And I think if he can do that, he can walk away from this weekend feeling like it was a pretty successful one. Yeah,
already it's been a strong weekend for Lando Norris. Let's see if he can finish that off. Let's hear from him. Qualified second, starts alongside Max Verstappen.
Hey Lando, I know it's not pole, but just fractions in it. It felt like you were just more on it in that quali session. Can you take kind of some solace from that?
I didn't even know what the gap was in the end, but the car was feeling good. I was feeling good, especially in Q3. It was actually the first run the first session where I started to feel a little bit more lively. So, a good amount of positives. Not a perfect lap, but I think everyone was struggling to put a perfect lap together. So still a simple track, but difficult at the same time. But happy with second. Good position for tomorrow. Keeps me in the race, and that's the main thing.
I think that middle sector was insane. I think that's what really hauled you into it. I know just generally the way that this weekend has built up, can that give you a lot of confidence tomorrow?
I think so. I mean, Max has always been good in qualifying, and as a team, we've struggled always a little bit more in qualifying. Whether that's set up or what, I'm not too sure. We know that the Red Bulls are running higher downforce, which allows them, especially with the DRS, to be a lot more competitive. So, not a surprise that they're ahead, honestly. But it's a long race. We know we have good pace in both conditions, especially at the inters. We've seen it already today. We've not done any long running in the dry, so it's impossible to predict. But a long race, a lot of things can happen, just like last year. So let's wait and see.
Good luck.
Lando Norris then will have that inside view down to turn 1. Might well try what his teammate did on Antonelli, late on the brakes, down the inside into turn 1. And speak of Kimi Antonelli, well, Jed, I mean, what a weekend he's having so far. Okay, the sprint race didn't quite turn out to what he wanted it to be, but he put it on pole for the sprint, and he follows that up with 3rd place for the Grand Prix. I feel like we're now really starting to see the speed that was promised from Antonelli.
It was always going to be a tall order for him to just come into F1 and go out the box firing on all guns. We saw when he had that practice session in Monza, it didn't end well. It ended up in the wall. We didn't get a real idea of what he could do. There were glimpses that he was going to be very special, but ending in the wall wasn't special. We've seen him this year doing a really solid job, but he needs to be better than solid. It's not good enough against George Russell especially to be solid. And this weekend, I think it's opened up our eyes to what he might be able to do. And I don't want to lump loads of pressure on him. I don't think that's fair. It's his 6th race. But there is something about him which Toto Wolff has seen and understands and wants to exploit and wants to get the best of for Mercedes. And I believe in Toto, so I believe in Kimi Antonelli?
Well, I mean, Mercedes have been convinced about Kimi Antonelli for a long time. I've actually was lucky enough at the Autosport Awards in January to sit next to Kimi Antonelli, and he's lovely. What a charming lad. And I was just chatting away to him, and then I bumped into James Vowles, and he said, "Oh, he's sitting next to Kimi. A great evening, great kid to talk to. He's been amazing forever. His data is outstanding." And obviously, James Vowles, we all know, loves the now Williams team principal, but previously at Mercedes as a strategist, could not stop singing the praises of Kimi. He said all his numbers were pointing in the right direction. Didn't have the most stellar F2. It wasn't anything to write home about, kind of unnotable series. But there are lots of caveats, the car and all that side of it. But they are absolutely convinced by him. And I think people who have followed his career for a while, and he has been, within the motorsport world, he's been on people's radar for a while. No one's particularly surprised. I think maybe it only being his 6th race, it's probably come about sooner than maybe what people were expecting. But I think there's quite a good feeling in the paddock about it. Everybody likes him. No one finds him offensive. He's just a really nice kid. And I hope I'm not being patronising as I say that. He's 18. Incredible what he's done this weekend. Just very impressive from him. Very cool, very not particularly calm. He's very excitable, which I love.
He's Italian.
His dad even more so, which I also love. I love that his dad.
He's got a bit of a cross between a sort of Senna and a Rossi when it comes to kind of looks. You glance at Ayrton Senna, a bit of Valentino Rossi.
Yeah, he's got a real charm about him, hasn't he? The curls, everything, the sort of innocent boy look about him. But that's his personality as well. He's just a really lovely person. This is his whole life. This is everything that he's been working towards. And that's why he's so happy. We talked about the sprint qualifying. He got the pole. It's not just sprint for him. It was everything for him. It was everything in his career that he'd been working towards. And now he's shown within proper qualifying, okay, he was 3rd. But look at the names he's ahead of. That's really impressive. It's a really good day's work for him.
Just a short one. Toto met Kimi when he was 11 years old. Toto wasn't going to make the same mistake he made with Verstappen and let him go. He was definitely signing him for Mercedes, and that's what he's done.
He's also so well protected by that team, even hearing on the radio, Pete Bonington has engineered Toto Wolff, reassuring him after a tough sprint race, don't worry about it, mate, there'll be more, this is just a sprint. Tell you what, he pulled the blinder in qualifying, starts 3rd. Let's hear from Kimi Antonelli.
Hey Kimi, I know it's not pole position, but how stoked are you at the way you bounced back from that disappointment this morning to still deliver an incredible lap, just a fraction of pole?
Yeah, it was a good way to bounce back. Struggled a little bit during the session. Track was different, quite a lot different compared to yesterday. Obviously with the rain, it washed out most of the rubber, so different feeling with the car, and took a little bit to adapt, but happy with the last lap. Honestly, I was a little bit too greedy going into turn 1. I had a small lockup, but still managed to have a strong second half of the lap, and now looking forward to tomorrow.
It feels like you've got tons of confidence in the car around here. You've obviously learned some lessons from this morning in terms of how you're going to approach the race. What is possible, do you think, tomorrow? Staying on the podium?
Well, I don't want to really call it. I think you know what I really want for tomorrow, but McLaren are really fast. I think they will have a bit of pace advantage, but I think we can, hopefully we can fight with Max and the McLaren eventually. I'll try to be ready for anything.
Well, best of luck.
Thank you.
That's your top 3 then. Verstappen, Norris and Antonelli. Championship leader Oscar Piastri. Bit of work to do for him then, going from 4th on the grid, Jem, but he got his elbows out in the sprint. He'll do it again in the Grand Prix.
You took the words out of my mouth. I can't see anything getting in the way when he really wants to do it. We've seen time and time again he is aggressive from the start, and he will be aggressive again tomorrow.
He will start ahead of George Russell, who has been a little bit of drift of his teammate Antonelli. He'll be looking to address that. Good results once again, it has to be said, for the 2 Williams drivers, Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon, both inside that top 10 ahead of the Ferraris. I mean, Williams are having a brilliant year. They really are best of the rest, and this is lining them up well for that transition into 2026, which is what they're all aiming for, really. But these results will give them a really solid base and confidence.
Yeah, Sainz just needs to go out there and not do what he did in the sprint race, which is hit the wall and get a puncture. So they just need to keep their cool. And I think this early on in the championship, it's about finishing races. That's more important than racing and ending up in the wall.
I was with Williams when the penalty came through for Albon, and they lost fourth place, at the 5 points that come with it, and that's a big blow for them.
Massive.
That's a really big blow. That was a real kind of, big sigh. That meant a lot to them. So you have to finish the race clean as well.
Yes, that's true.
He did. He had a great result finishing on the road, did Albon in the sprint fourth. We'll talk about that later on. But I tell you what, Jen, both Williams ahead of both Ferrari. Charles Leclerc felt like he had no more in the tank. And we know if he's got nothing left, there really is no more to find in that Ferrari. He was 8th, but Lewis Hamilton out in Q2 and shaking his head in the cockpit.
That car is running so hot and cold. 1 minute it's winning in China in the sprint race, then it's third in the sprint. We'll talk about that later. And then qualifying, it's not coming together, and it's just all over the place. I feel for them.
Yeah, it's a really difficult car to drive. Toto Wolff said that there's absolutely no way Hamilton has lost his magic earlier in the weekend, and he hasn't. Of course he hasn't. There has to be the car. They haven't quite fixed whatever the issue is with it. Neither driver is happy with it. As you say, Harry, if Charles Leclerc, who's been with that team for so long now, is struggling, it's not just Lewis Hamilton, it's not just a new driver issue. There is a fundamental problem with the car. Neither driver can get the best out of it. And Hamilton going out in Q2, that is an enormous blow to the team.
After such a strong sprint as well. Well, he lacked pace, but he managed to make up for it within the chaos to get that top 3 result. So definitely, as you say, Jen, hot and cold throughout the weekend already. He will have some work to do from 12th. Esteban Ocon in the Haas finished 9th in qualifying ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. So the 2 Red Bulls bookmarking the top 10. Hadjar just missed out. He'll go from 11th ahead of Hamilton. Bortoletto, good result for him to get through into Q2. Out-qualifies his teammate Nico Hülkenberg. Doohan 14th. Liam Lawson 15th. Hülkenberg, Alonso, Gasly, Stroll and Oliver Behrman, your grid ahead of the Miami Grand Prix. Beck, I know you've got to go, but we've got to do our predictions for you. Who's going to win the Grand Prix?
I am going with Max Verstappen, and it's going to be the new father, just like Danny Willett, won at the Masters. That's where my money is.
Okay, I like it.
Polstead has never won this race.
It's first for everything.
Right, we'll leave it there. Beck, we have to let you go. We're going to talk about the sprint in a minute as well, because we're going to swap you out for our BBC F1 correspondent.
You've been subbed.
I've been subbed.
You've been subbed, Beck Clancy, as we will await the arrival of Andrew Benson.
Good sub.
5 Live Formula 1.
Right, well, substitutions in place now for the pod. Andrew Benson, the BBC's F1 correspondent, has graciously found about 11 and a half minutes in his schedule to come and join us to look back at what was, I think, a chaotic sprint race, Andrew. I mean, before it even began, well, we had some rain and we went down to 19 drivers pretty much straight away because Charles Leclerc put it in the wall.
It was great, Harry, not Charles Leclerc putting it in the wall, but just the sprint generally. You know, they're not normally that exciting, the sprint races, but this one was like, incident a second, pretty much. And, started with Leclerc crashing. There was a first corner farrago between the 2 leaders. There was an incident in the pit lane. There was a big crash on the track, which brought out the safety car. That changed the winner. And the race finished under a safety car. So, yeah, what more do you want?
Well, we'll just leave it there, shall we? But I mean, Jen, you were in the pit lane. We actually had the beauty of a cover in the commentary box. We were nice and warm with a bit of air conditioning. You were out there with no raincoat, no umbrella. I mean, in the pit lane, there was absolute drama. We had, when it was moving from wet to dry, that was when the carnage really happened.
It was quite an exciting grid, I have to say, because it was chucking it down. Then it was okay. Then it was chucking it down again. And as you said, 28-minute delay for the start of the race. We were in that mode of just talk.
Poor old Damon Hill.
I know, his first baptism of fire, I would say, his first ever session with us. But it was dramatic. Speaking to the engineers and mechanics on the grid, you get a sense that they were just dealing with things as they unfolded, and that was how the whole thing kind of ended. I mean, it started and began chaotically, and that was just going on throughout the race, especially when the red flag came out.
Best sprint so far?
Definitely up there. I mean, I think you'd have to go some to beat Brazil 21 when Hamilton started at the back and came through to finish fifth on the way to that brilliant victory ultimately in the Grand Prix. Of course, the sprint rules were different then. The result of it decided the grid for the Grand Prix. But it was really exciting, and there was, even when there was nothing happening, it was exciting because it was like, what's going to happen? Are they going to get the race started or not?
How many formation laps
How many formation laps is it going to be with the safety car? Is it going to be without the safety car? Communications were not great from the FIA initially, and then but it looked like it had boiled down to the start, where Oscar Piastri, for the second time in 2 races, got a really good start, better than the pole sitter, Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes, after his great lap yesterday, and got alongside Antonelli long before the first corner. He'd won the corner by then. Of course, Antonelli accused him of pushing him off, but he did no such thing. But then the key point of the race was very much like the Miami Grand Prix last year, which was kind of handed to Lando Norris by a safety car. Same thing happened with the sprint today. Piastri had pitted for his slick tyres. Norris was going to come in on the next lap, and in that gap, Liam Lawson and Fernando Alonso tangled. We still haven't heard whether one of them or neither of them is going to get a penalty for that. And that brought out the safety car, and that obviously slows everybody out on track, and that gave Norris enough time to get into the pits and out again while holding on to the lead. Piastri was obviously a little bit fed up about that, but Piastri being Piastri, just like super cool and calm about it. Doesn't really matter. It's only a sprint.
It's only 1 point, isn't it?
It's only 1 point too, but
but
at one
could
point
be
might
the decider.
matter. Exactly, 1 point might
could.
really matter this season because it's so close between those two. But it wasn't just them. Hamilton finished third with a really wise tyre choice, and Verstappen. Well, we can get onto that in a minute.
It did feel like luck definitely went the way of Lando Norris with that safety car timing, Jen. But in the build-up to that, at one point in the early part of the race, once it settled down a bit, the gap started to develop, and Piastri had about 3 or 4 seconds, give or take, to Norris. But then Norris was taking time out of him, got to within a second before the pit stops happened. So Norris was starting to apply the pressure, and as the track conditions were changing, Piastri made a mistake, had to cut the chicane that leads you into the middle sector. So Norris was showing strong speed here.
Yeah, he was. And I think he felt quite comfortable out there. So, yes, as Andrew says, luck helped him with the timing of that safety car. I thought he'd gone too early. And I thought as soon the crash happened, and I thought, it's not going to work out for him. It's not going to. But it did. It collected him at exactly the right point. It was so lucky and so fortuitous. Would he have won anyway? I suppose that's kind of what you're asking, and he might have got the opportunity, but we won't know that. But I think he was showing a good amount of speed.
Yes, but he was showing a good amount of speed on worn intermediates on a drying track, and then just come out on slick tyres that were fresh. And Piastri would have had something like a 3-second lead with about 4 laps to go. So I'm betting on Piastri in that situation, especially on a track where it's difficult to overtake.
Yeah, certainly. And I think Alonso had just pitted when he went out, and then there was the tangle with Lawson. I don't know if those fresh tyres were not up to speed, and that's why it was more of an effect than not. I don't know if that was the timing of that was unfortunate for Alonso, certainly, or not.
Well, I think what the crux of it then happens is those changeover in the pit lane, right? That is when carnage starts to happen because the track is drying out constantly. You can see all throughout that first part of the sprint where they're trying to find that wetter part of the track, right? And then it's easy to talk about how great it was between Piastri and Norris, but Kimi Antonelli was the man who was on pole position. But what happened to Kimi Antonelli? And it was chaos, Jen. Actually, you had the best view of it in the house, in the pit lane. What happened?
So Kimi Antonelli was coming in, but Max Verstappen had already pitted at Red Bull, and Red Bull had done their pit stop and sent Max Verstappen out. But Max Verstappen couldn't have known the light went green, signalling that he should leave the pit box, and Kimi Antonelli was coming in hot, and the two crashed into each other. It meant that Kimi Antonelli could not pit stop, so he had to make the decision to just go on through the pits. Max Verstappen front wing damage, quite a lot of damage to that Red Bull car. But more importantly, what on earth went wrong at Red Bull? again. How many times are we going to see that these mistakes are creeping into what was a almost perfect routine that they had down there before Jonathan Wheatley left?
Those questions will be asked. I think we raised them in the commentary box at the time as well. And Kimi Antonelli, I think, a little bit unlucky when it came to that incident having. George Russell ended fifth, and they were really in a nice battle at one point. Russell looked the quicker of the two Mercedes in the early stages. I think Antonelli will take a lot of learnings from this weekend too.
Antonelli's hopes of the win were basically over pretty much off the line. And then he overcooked it into the first corner, trying to defend against Piastri, ran into the runoff area, rejoined fourth, and he was a bit stuck for the win then from then on. He was very unlucky in the pits. He probably would have got, fourth, fifth, something like that, if it hadn't been for that incident. But of course, Verstappen was even unluckier because it wasn't his fault that he got sent, and the 10-second penalty that he got because of it has put him right to the back. Again, it's only a sprint. It's not that big a blow in the championship, but for 3-4 points, whatever it was, he lost. Again, that could come. He could come to regret that come the end of the year.
Verstappen did get a penalty for that 10 seconds. Didn't get a penalty, though, for being a false start, being out of position in the grid spot. We saw a replay of it, and to us at the time, it looked like he'd gone too far forward. But race control deemed it no.
Well, the problem is we only got the shot from the onboard camera, and it did look from the onboard that he was slightly ahead with his front wheels of his grid slot in the way that Norris was, but not as much as Norris was in Bahrain when Verstappen dobbed him in. But the stewards have more angles than we do, so I would imagine that before making that decision, they've looked at the camera on the cars alongside Verstappen on the grid, and any other cameras that might be around, CCTV perhaps, to get a better, clearer judgment on whether he was ahead, and they've decided he wasn't. So, and we've not had a protest against it, so I figure that they must have got that right.
Well, in the end, he was 17th come the end of that, with Norris, Piastri and Lewis Hamilton, who managed to finish third. He's got something about him when it comes to sprint races, doesn't he, Jen?
He loves a sprint race now, doesn't he? The win in China and then this, which, I mean, he called it spot on, as he so often does. And it was his decision to pit in early. It was lap 12. So not many people had done that and made that decision. And I think at the time he was in 6th place. And that was quite a bold decision to make. But once again, it shows that Hamilton knows the tyres. He knows his limitations and what he can do. And actually, by coming in and going onto those soft tyres, he was in the perfect place to capitalise. And that's exactly what he did. And getting another podium, I think, has really lifted the spirits at Ferrari, lifted the spirits of Lewis Hamilton. He's been down in the dumps, one-word answers to questions in press conferences. You could see he was troubled. He had the weight of the world on his shoulders, and that seems to, for maybe a short while, been dissipated and gone.
Well, the contrast in mood was quite stark between Thursday and after the race, but it's just classic Lewis Hamilton, He's a winner. He's the most successful driver of all time, and he doesn't enjoy being uncompetitive, and that's what he's been in the last 3 Grand Prix, or pretty much since the start of the season, apart from the China sprint. Today he was uncompetitive again in the wet, and he said afterwards he made the call for slicks because he might as well, because he was going nowhere on the inters, and it worked out really well for him. He's not out of the woods yet, and let's see how he gets on in the dry.
Well, he did manage to get some crucial points on the board. 6 bagged for Lewis Hamilton, finishing in 3rd ahead. Shout out for Alex Albon, getting another good points finish for Williams in the sprint, finishing inside that top 4, making hay of the chaos. George Russell 5th. Lance Stroll continues, scoring 100% of all of Aston Martin's points so far.
Yeah, I mean, at one point it looked like Alonso was going to be 3rd or 4th, didn't it? But then, in fact, he has not had the luck. And he was saying actually afterwards that he'd been calling for slicks for 4 or 5 laps before they eventually brought him in. If he'd done that, well, he might have crashed, but he could have looked a genius. I don't know. I don't want to judge the Alonso-Lawson incident here. Let's wait and see what the stewards say about it.
Stroll bagging some crucial points nonetheless for Aston Martin in 6th. Lawson finished 7th on the road. Behrman finished 8th, has been given a 5-second penalty, so he falls out of the points. That'll bump Sonoda up, and Antonelli on the road rounded out the top 10. So disappointment for him after securing pole for the sprint.
Can I just say, well done to Liam Lawson,
Yeah.
scoring points, and he made the most tremendous start. He was 14th on the grid, made up 5 places from that start, and I think that really helped to elevate him up the order, and I think that's the confidence boost that he needed so badly at Racing Bulls.
Could be really crucial for him to get that momentum back. We didn't see Alonso finish, he retired, so did Sainz, and as we said, Charles Leclerc did not get going after crashing on the way to the original formation lap. Right, well, we had some, I would say, unexpected rain for the sprint. We are expecting more rain for Sunday's Grand Prix. Last time I checked, there was a 40% chance. So I'm going to ask you for your race winner predictions, but it really could be anybody if we get even a taster of the chaos that we got in the sprint, Jen.
Yeah, it's gone up to 45%
Ooh.
chance, and a little bit of thunder as well thrown into the mix. My worry is that they'll just red flag it.
No,
after looking
Damon
at
Hill's
today.
going to love the filling that he's doing in his first weekend on the BBC commentary
He's
box.
earning his £2.50 this week. That's good. So what, you want a
I
prediction?
want a race winner, please, from each of you, and then we'll wrap this up.
I am going to go for Russell.
Russell for the win.
Yeah.
Okay. Jen Gow
Left
with
field, but
GR.
I'm going to go for it.
Benny? Think of the chaos that happened today.
That's what I'm thinking.
Piastri.
Okay.
Oh.
Very good. I'm going to go for... I'll go for Norris, just to be different.
So mixing it up.
Mixing it up. Right, that is what we think. Let's see how it all unfolds. You can listen to the race on 5 Live, the Miami Grand Prix. Who will win out? Can Oscar Piastri extend his championship lead? Or Lando Norris fight back? This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.